We are live. I will give this just a second to make sure you guys can hear me. We all know that's a problem for me. I have technical skills issues, technical difficulties, whatever. And there it goes. It looks like we're here. Let me know if you guys can hear me. I'm going to push play on the recorder now before I forget. And let's see. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, make sure you do highlight my name, do the @Lachri Fine Art. Otherwise, if it's not highlighted in orange, I'm not going to see the question. So just make sure you're doing that so that I see what you write. I don't want to ignore anybody, but it happens. Okay, cleaning up my eraser, which is a hot mess. How did that get that dirty? And why are there colors on it? Weird. Okay, good. Paul says he can hear me. The shoulder chicken is in the other room. I actually considered bringing him in here for tonight, but my allergies are so bad. I have been sneezing so much. I have a feeling he would keep jumping off the perch. So at the end of the live stream, I can go grab him and bring him out to visit everybody. So tonight, that is what I'm working on, is a portrait of him. You can see where I've smudged graphite where I don't want it. So I'm just going to clean that up. Just using a regular eraser there. And I'm going to brush that away. Okay. So tonight I am working in graphite, and I'm kind of excited because this is the first time in a very long time. Did I say that he was going to be here? This is a no, we're good. Hey, the first time in a long time that I've been able to use whatever graphite pencils I want, which means I get to combine a bunch. All last year, every single graphite piece I did was a review of a specific pencil, so I was just using that pencil. This time, I am using everything, and you'll see that if you look in the video description, I've got a list of all of the supplies that I'm using, and there's a lot of different pencils. Mostly I'm using the Faber-Castell 9000 and the Derwent Graphic, the new ones. I've got a few, and I don't think I listed them, the Mars Stedler. I used a little bit of those, but for the most part, I'm sticking with the Derwent Graphics and the Faber-Castell 9000. I'm also going to be using my mechanical pencil with the AN4B lead. Now, you can no longer get AN4B lead. No one makes it. I did find a listing for it on Amazon that it says it'll be in stock in 2 months. I don't believe it. Also, they're using the photo of the Pentel Stein. The Stein is not the same as the high polymer. You want the high polymer, which the container looks like this. Very, very different than the ones. The Stein container, it's rounded and everything's completely yellow. Big difference. It's a difference of comparing, maybe the Stein is closer to, I would say, a 4H, it's hard as a rock, versus this, which is more like a 7 or 8B. Huge difference in the lead. So don't get the Stein. It won't work the same. It's not that you can't use it. It's just not going to give you the results you're seeing here. But you can still get the AN3B lead. And I suspect that's going to be close, about as close as you'll get as far as graphite goes. I have to order some for myself so I can test that out. But that would be a fair alternative for the small details if you want to use a mechanical pencil. And then everything else I've got listed in the video description. Moise wants to know what my least favorite color is. Yellow. Especially like fluorescent yellow. It's not okay. Which is funny because my mom's favorite, well, hers is soft yellow, but yellow is my favorite, which is hilarious. Cameron wants to know if I use Caran d'Ache pencils. I do have the set, and I may not have pulled them out. I thought I had them over here. I have theirs. They have the graph wood. They're okay. I prefer the Faber-Castell 9000 with the graphite pencils. The Caran d'Ache, the thing I like about Caran d'Ache's pencils is they're color-coded, and I wish why do other pencil companies not do that? That is like the most genius thing when you can quickly look and go, okay, here's going to be my darker pencils versus the H pencils, whereas with every other set, as you can see here, in almost as far as I know, every other graphite pencil, they all look the same. You have to scroll through and kind of look to find which one you want, which I think is kind of crazy. I don't understand why companies have not figured out what Caran d'Ache did. Color code them. It makes it easier for us. So I do have them. I like the Faber-Castell 9000 and the Derwent Graphics a little bit better as far as how dark I can get things, how blendable they are. With the Caran d'Ache ones, I found that I was more dependent on my blending tools than I am with these pencils. So it's just going to be personal preference, but they are good pencils. Graphite's one of those things that it's kind of hard to mess up. The only thing that I think makes for a really bad graphite, Prismacolor turquoise are notorious for this. They have those little nuggets in them, like little rocks that scratch the paper. That's a bad graphite. But as long as they've got a smooth formulation, they're okay. And actually, the old Derwent, they used to be scratchy. Have a lot of scratchiness in them. Not as bad as Prismacolor, but bad enough. So you want to make sure when you order, or if you go with the Derwent, make sure you get this one. If it has this image on it in this cover on the tin, that's the new one. Those are the good ones. The old ones were a bit scratchy. Okay. I apologize. I'll probably be coughing quite a bit tonight from allergies. Okay, so getting started, I am just going to slowly work my way around. It's funny to look at this reference photo. Also, this reference photo, if you go to patreon.com/Lachri, you do not have to be a member. I've made this one available for everybody to download, and you are welcome to draw it yourself. So this guy, this is my shoulder chicken, and I took this photo several months ago, and his cheeks are really, really dark, and he's molting now. He's having, excuse me, his first molt, and now his face is getting more and more white, which I'm kind of excited about because I think it's adorable. Although he could grow a second head and I would think it was adorable, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, these are, it's kind of funny looking at this photo because I'm like, wow, he doesn't really look that much like this now. So I'm going to zoom my reference photo in, and I'm going to, let's see, where do I want to start? I think I'm going to just start around the eye and work my way up towards the beak. Now, I want to thank my moderators tonight. We've got The Art of Joseph Fincham and Valerie. Valerie has a wood burning channel here on YouTube, and Joseph Fincham has a painting and drawing channel. You can check out both of their channels linked in the video description. So I am going to start cleaning this up, and actually, I think I went darker than what I want on part of this. Where is my eraser? This is pretty much me painting or drawing all the time. I swear half the time is spent looking for the supplies that I've misplaced. Oh, it's right in front of me. So part of this is actually quite a bit lighter, so I'm just going to take the Tombow Mono Eraser and lighten that just a bit. Now make sure when you're using graphite, don't use your hand to brush the little eraser crumbles away. Use something like this. This one you can get in the drafting department, like where you've got stencils and such, the little circle stencils at art supply stores. Use a paintbrush if you need to. Use something. This is better, but you don't want to smudge and smear the work. I've also got a piece of glassine under my hand. This is protecting my hand so I don't end up with graphite all over the side of my hand, which ends up all over here. And it also protects the paper from the oils of my skin. So make sure that when you're working, use this guy, something to brush away your eraser. JPC13 Art wants to know why Chicken is not joining me while I draw him, because I keep sneezing and I'm pretty sure it's going to make him jump off his perch every time I do. So I figured that would be a bit distracting, but I will get him at the end of the video. Just remind me the last 10 minutes. I'll go grab him and bring him in here. And I hope I left the light on in his room. He may be super sleepy. I don't think I did turn the light on. So yeah, he'll be really sleepy when I go to get him. Okay, even though it's not his bedtime. Actually, I'm going to switch to a harder leaded pencil here. Let's go with, use a 5H if I can find it. Again, my ongoing complaint of, I'll use a 3H. Why do pencil companies not color code these? That would save me a lot of time. It almost makes me want to use the Caran d'Ache all the time for that reason alone. I just don't like the pencils themselves, the graphite, as much. But the amount of time that we spend wasting looking for the pencil that we want, is it a 4H or a 4B and all of that? It's still just bizarre that more companies haven't figured out that's something that artists want. So we'll come through here, just working really slow. I really want to define these edges. This part needs to be really clean. The feathers can be fluffier and a little bit looser, but in here I want this detailing really, really clean, very well defined. You guys will be happy to know next week's project is going to be I'm going to start working on an oil painting. I've had a lot of requests to paint somebody with darker skin, so I found the most gorgeous photos over on Graphic Stock of a black man, and his skin, he's a bodybuilder, and just the way that the light is hitting his muscles and his face, it's these photos, he's just beautiful. Everything about this photo is beautiful. So I'm really excited to start that portrait soon. I've had a lot of requests for oil portraits and a lot of requests for darker skinned models, so that will be a really fun one. I'm excited to start these. I can't wait for you to see these photos. They're incredible. Denise wants to know if I work best in the morning, afternoon, or night. Definitely the night. I cannot paint or draw in the morning. It is so hard. Or even the day. If the sun is out, I don't want to draw. I definitely prefer morning. So we've got these little details here in the eye. Actually, I'm going to blow my reference photo up a bit more. Cameron's art channel says, do you watch Heather Rooney at all? I've seen her stuff. I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos just because I don't have time. I've seen her work. She's incredible. Would acrylics stick to the pencil so you can color code them yourself? Yeah, you could do that. I don't have that kind of time. If I buy a pencil, it needs to be ready to go. That is just not something, I mean, and then when I sharpen it, I go through them quickly enough that for me is not going to be the most practical solution. But you definitely could do that. I watched a video, I read a blog post once, and it was hilarious. This artist decided that she was saving time by taking all of her polychromos and shaving off the wood casings and putting the lead in different holders so she didn't have to sharpen the wood shavings. But the amount of time it would have taken her to do that, because her theory was it was going to save time, but the amount of time it would take to complete that process, it was insane. She could have gotten several pieces of artwork done. It was kind of, it made me giggle, because it was like, I can understand wanting it to be faster, but that is, modifying sometimes can actually make way more work for you. Now the background here, I used graphite powder. This one is by Generals. I don't have the bottle here. And a soft tool. And I cannot wait to show you the video. This one doesn't go up next week, but the following week. But I used the soft tools to blend, and I got such smooth, even coverage. And then I would put the graphite regular pencils on top to darken it. And then I went on top again with the graphite powder. I was so excited with how quickly I got that background done. So just very slow process here on the details. The rest will go really fast. It's the eyes and around the beak and nose that this area in here too, that I'll spend a lot more time. Victoria Diaz Art says, I can't find glassine anywhere in my country because I can't translate it to Spanish. What would other paper be good for that? I don't know. I've been using grease-proof paper, but someone else may be able to answer you in the chat, because I honestly don't know. If Kaneho was here, he might be able to tell us what would be an alternative. Andrew says, do you still use Createx airbrush or any other brand of airbrush paint? I don't know how much more. The only thing that I can see myself really using the Createx for at this point is if I don't have the color I want in my Holbein. And I did get the airbrush paint from Golden's. My airbrush was clogging a lot. It wasn't as bad as it does with Createx, but the Holbeins, it never clogged. And I'm not sure if I had just done a really crappy job of cleaning it the last time I used, so it may not have been the Golden's paint that caused it. It may have been my airbrush being bad. So I cleaned it, but I was still having problems, so I'm going to soak it again. I only tried it once on one project, so I can't say for certain that it wasn't just user error on my part. I'll try the Golden's again. I liked the bottle that the Golden's came in because it had the little dripper. It was a lot easier than the Holbein. Just the tops were much, much better with Golden's than with Holbein. But Holbein, I didn't have any issues with it clogging, which was a pretty big deal because I'm really bad about that. But the Createx airbrush, I mean, it works. It's not like if you weren't guys that have it, use it. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It just clogs a little bit more and it made more work for me. but the Holbeins have the same finish, so I'm right now loving those. Moise wants to know the name of my shoulder chicken. Well, we call him Chicken. His name was Jace, although I think that my husband was saying he wanted to just call him Sheldon. But when people ask, like when people come over, he just introduces him as Chicken. So we just go with that. And the chicken thinks his name is Chicken, so. Whoops, just scrolled past some questions there. Oh, good, Kaneoho is here. Maybe he can answer the question about glassine. Let's see. Clary says or asks, do you have any tips for cast shadows of subjects like a jaguar with a white background? I'm not really sure what you mean for that. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking or how I could help you on that. I'm sorry. Cast shadow of a jaguar. I mean, that's kind of like, I think that would be a similar question to, how do you draw a cat? Like, it's too broad. I need you to narrow down a little bit more of what you actually need help on. Kaneha wants to know if Derwent sells 10B pencils. I don't think so. My set goes up to, I want to say, is it an 8B? 9B. I don't think they've got a 10B. Arjun says, I heard a lot of stories about Prismacolor pencils and breakage. I'm considering getting the Faber-Castell Polychromos. What do you recommend? Faber-Castell Polychromos or the Luminance. Well, both is what I use. But yeah, those are both good pencils. Luminance and the Polychromos. Andrew wants to know how I clean my airbrush. I have an airbrush fluid. I'm sitting out. I have thing that's actually for that, and I run water through it first, and then I run the airbrush cleaner by Createx through it. But when it gets really clogged, I just pull the majority of the pieces apart and soak it in hot water in the sink, and that'll help the paint to kind of loosen up, and I can scrape everything out with an old needle. You don't want to use a needle that's in the airbrush because you can bend it, but I have old ones that were already bent, and I will use that to kind of scrape out some of the paint that built up inside. But soaking with water in hot water works really well for me. What pencil sharpener do I use? I use a few different ones. I use a Coom long pointed sharpener, which I'm not using tonight. That's for, it depends on what I'm using. Right now, I'm actually just using this one. I believe this one is by Coom. It's just a little metal one, and those work great. Little cheapy ones work really well. Cameron's art channel wants to know if I like the Caran d'Ache colored pencils. Yes, I'm gonna guess you're new to my channel because I have a lot of, like, every colored pencil video I do is with those. So they are in it. So yeah, if you go through any of my videos, most of them are with Caran d'Ache. Caran d'Ache and Faber-Castell. Okay. Actually, I probably should switch to a lighter pencil. One of the things that I like so much about the Derwent graphic pencils, they get super light. Like this one's an 8H. I think it goes up to 9H. And you would think, who would need a pencil that's going to be that hard? I like them for certain things. They're pretty cool. I didn't think I would like that much when I first tested them. I was thinking that would be a bit wasteful. This one is an 8H. But it basically allows me to do a lot of shading that normally I would depend on shading tools for. I can do it with these and get just beautiful results. And this video, by the way, is not sponsored by anybody, but my Derwent graphic pencils were provided to me months ago by Derwent when I did my initial review. But I like them, so I keep using them. Clary says, I mean the shadow cast by, this is the question about the shadow behind the Jaguar. I mean the shadow cast by the subject, like when you're in the sun, the shadow behind you on the big black mass. Sorry, yeah, I'm still not sure how to answer that question. I would have a reference photo, or if you don't, when you're trying to draw something, if you don't, like if this is a case where your reference photo doesn't have the lighting like you want, look and see what other artists have done as a solution. Like, I mean, if I'm going to do the portrait that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to go look at some backgrounds that other artists have done to give me ideas on what may and may not work for my model that I've chosen. So I think looking at what other people have done is a great way to get ideas for stuff like that. But instead of just kind of going out of your head without seeing, because sometimes you'll look at stuff and find that you don't like what something looked like. Like what it looks like in your head may seem awesome, and then you realize when you actually do it that it didn't look so awesome. So if you can find where another artist found out first that it didn't look so awesome that way, that would be better than jumping in. Or in which case, find something that did look exactly like what you were going for. Look at what another artist has created doing that. I've done that when I decided I wanted to paint my elephants in fog, for example, a few years ago. I looked up elephants in fog and found other artists who had created a similar look just to get an idea of what would or would not look good. Or capture the look I was going for, I should say. But some questions are going to be a bit too broad, I think. I mean, there's only without seeing the work or being able to actually demonstrate how to do something, I can only answer so much. But certain questions, if it's too broad, you're going to hear me say, oh, I don't know, I can't really just answer that without seeing stuff. Nicholas said, I kept thinking that the chicken's name was Desmond. Then I remembered that was a camera. I'm impressed you remembered it was the camera. Denise says, do you crochet or knit? I used to crochet. I can't anymore. I don't have time anymore anyway, but I can't look down. Even doing that hurts my neck because of my back and neck problems. So it is not an ideal activity for me anymore, unfortunately, which would be nice because now I love crocheted tops and such, but I have to buy them. I can't make anything, so... see how much time I waste looking up which pencil I want. This is pencil companies. Pay attention. Color code. Karen's art channel says, I have a lot of Prismacolor pencils, but I'm saving up for Karen Dosh pencils. Is it okay to mix both brands together? Absolutely. All of those pencils really do work well together. So that is definitely something that you can do. This is that A and 4B lead that gets so super dark that no one can get. So, you know, I apologize. But I think that the 3B will be a decent alternative. So here I'm using these little sketchy lines and really paying attention to which direction that those feathers go. It's not like I need to sit and count, okay, 4 feathers this way, 8 feathers that way. It doesn't need to be exact, but I do want to make sure that my lines are going in the right direction. Anthony wants to know, when I used the Prismacolor colored pencils, did I only use the light fast? No, I didn't even know about light fast until, it wasn't something I researched really until I started looking into Faber-Castell and then thought, wow, but I wasn't selling colored pencil work at that point, so it doesn't really matter. Nobody, anything I had done was given to people. Dunhill wants to know if I use the Faber-Castell eraser pencils. I have the ink erasers like these. I've still got these. Mine are from Mexico, and so these ones have that lime green. The ones from the UK and US are a cream color. I don't use it on graphite. I use them sometimes on colored pencil. They work great with that. Phyllis said she'll I'll crochet you some. Thank you. Oops. Trecole says, when you sign, excuse me, when you sign a finished graphite drawing, do you sign with a pencil or a more permanent tool like a pen? A pencil. Because here's the thing, a lot of pens, like gel pens and stuff, don't stick that well, and they can scrape off and cause other issues, so I just stick to graphite. Oops. Okay. I love the mechanical pencil for these little details. I barely have to add any pressure, and it's just very, very dark. What am I looking for? So I'm going to block in some of these areas that I know are going to be dark, just so that I can easily map stuff out. So here's an area. He doesn't have this little eyebrow thing at all anymore. So I'm starting with the lighter pencil. And I want to make sure that that's really sharp. The reason for that is if I just jump, I know that needs to be darker, but if I jump into a 5B, a 6B, I'm going to be more likely to have a very gritty, grainy look. Whereas if I, in this case, get this down first, anything that shows through, it's no longer going to be the white of the paper. It'll be this. And this being a harder lead, it gets into the tooth of the paper really well, but I don't want to push hard because I don't want to damage the tooth of the paper. And I don't want to keep reworking and reworking because you start to polish the graphite, which is definitely not what I want to do. Okay, I need one. I think I want a 2B. Get a mess over here. Come on, get out of there. I broke my lead by, there was something in it. There was a shaving I hadn't gotten out and it twisted it wrong. And now I've got a lead stuck in here. Come on, get out. And I still have the thing that caused the problem. It's stuck in here in the first place. Get out. There we go. Okay, now I can sharpen my pencil again. So now I'm using a 2B, and I'm going to come through and start building up some of the darker areas. Again, not pushing very hard, and I don't want to just keep reworking the same area again and again and end up polishing this graphite. Little teeny tiny strokes. Again, watch the direction of those feathers. Let's switch to a lighter pencil for those little ones. This is the 8H. And I would generally rather go too light than too dark. I will build up to my darker sections, but if I jump in and go too dark, it's a lot harder to lighten it back up than to slowly build up to darker. Cameron's art channel wants to know how long do portraits take you when you draw them, and what size paper do you use on portraits? It depends on the size, honestly. It could take me 3 or 4 days. It could take me 3 weeks. It just depends on the size, medium. There's too many factors in there. The portrait that I'm going to be doing, the oil painting one, that one I'm probably going to do as an 18 by 24 so that I can use oil primed canvas. And I'm going to do the underpainting, the grisaille method for the underpainting before I come on top with the actual colors. And on that one, I really want to focus because everyone is always asking about colors to use on portraits. And this one I think will be good because his skin is so dark. He is going to have a lot of colors. There will be purples and reds. And I mean, so many colors will be used. So that one will be fun to just kind of focus on the colors I glaze. So that I'm going to start by using the grisaille method for just getting my general shadows in there. And then for the glazing, we can focus on colors used. '74 Crisis, have you ever mixed graphite and watercolor pencils? I have no, I have not. Took me a minute. I'm like, wait, did I do that in my sketchbook? No, I have not. I take that back. I bet when I was a teenager I did, because I used to mix watercolor with everything I could get my hands on, because that's one of the few supplies I did have. Cheapy ones from like CVS Pharmacy or one of those, or Walgreens, or I don't know, they were for kids. But I used to mix that mostly with charcoal more than graphite. JPC13 Art says, if you accidentally polish the graphite, can you go over it with Prismacolor Colorless Blender to take away the shine? You would be adding wax, so you wouldn't be taking away shine. You would probably be making it a lot worse. So I'm going to go with no on that. You can spray a matte finish, which will help get rid of some of the shine to an extent. It's ideally just watch how you're working, work slow and light. There's an artist, Damian May, who's amazing. I don't know if he still posts. He used to post all the time and then stopped. I'm not sure what happened, but his artwork, he worked in graphite and he was absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm sure he's still amazing. I just don't see his posts anymore. But I've seen him throw work out where he over polished. He was unhappy with an area not being or getting a little too glossy. I'm not that picky. I avoid it, but I don't really care if it's there either. I don't feel like it ruins the piece. I don't want stuff super, super glossy, but I don't freak out if it gets a little bit because it's graphite and I just kind of expect it with the medium. But there are artists who are very, very picky about that. And I have seen people just, nope, I'm starting over. So right now what's happening, it feels like I'm too dark, but in reality, I'm probably not dark enough. And until I get everything else blocked in, that's when I'll start to really be able to tell and better judge my values. Jenny says, how do you take pictures of your graphite drawings? I usually have an extremely hard time taking pictures of mine because of the graphite shine. Thanks. Yeah, that's a problem with graphite. I've definitely had challenges with that myself. And I take them with the DSLR and just play around with the lighting, play around with the camera settings. I usually take photos where the artwork is not, you don't want it in direct sunlight, but I actually go into a slightly darker shaded area than I do with some of my other artwork. Kind of like I would with an oil painting that has high gloss and mess around with it from there. But I know a lot of people will scan the art. I've never been super thrilled with the quality my scanner produces, and the scanner you use will make a difference, but it seems to wash stuff out too much and overexpose things, and that's just, I've never been thrilled, but I've seen where other people used a scanner and got amazing results. It depends on the scanner. My old scanner from gosh, I must have gotten that in, I would guess around the early 2000s. That one was good, but when it broke, the new one, the replacements I got, they were terrible. They did not do a good job for me. So I use a DSLR to take photos. Let's see. Susanna wants to know if I plan to make an instruction book with art. You know, I used to really want to do that, and I know friends now, or I'm friends now with like Aliona Nicholson, who wrote the Colored Pencil Bible, and I've been friends with her since she's been working on the new one that's coming out in a couple of months. And seeing the amount of work that goes into that, there is no way I have time to do that and videos. Like, it's not even remotely possible. So it's a lot more work than you would think. So no, I don't have any plans anytime soon. I'm not saying it's not something I will ever or never do, but I don't have any plans to do it. I have so much respect for authors. There is so much involved. Like, it's so much more than you would think to do it right. So, yeah, that's not in my immediate future, that's for sure. Okay, that's getting too dark, so let's switch over. We'll use the light one. This is the 8H. Anthony Cassidy says, Grizel is pronounced like Chris I, by the way. Oh, good to know. I won't remember that, but good to know. We just learn to accept that I don't pronounce things correctly. Now, that is one thing I will say is probably a negative about me not having gone to art school. I can read all the books I want, but when you don't hear someone pronounce it properly, you end up making up your own pronunciations. Mine are more interesting. See, mine are creative. I have creative pronunciations of things the average person probably knows how to say. If you guys want to use the hashtag Lachri Live, you can see all of the artwork that you guys are using. So if you are on Twitter or Instagram or wherever, use that hashtag. And those of you who are watching can also look up that hashtag and see what everyone else is drawing. And I can also see your work easily. So make sure to use that so we can check out what you're creating. Whoops, scrolled too far. The Biso wants to know if I have any tutorials about getting the shallow depth of field effect on the background and pencil. Well, you'll see this on, that portion will be on not next week, but the week after. So you will see me do this. I've done some, but I don't think I did them as tutorials. So no, wait, I think I did do the, well, it's this sort of effect more, not the super soft. On the, what did I do that on? Was it an Eagle Owl? Last year, it was with the Caran d'Ache Graphwood pencils. That may help you. I don't remember how much of a tutorial I did. I may have just been talking about the pencils. But I'll plan, I need to do more graphite work, so hopefully I'll have more tutorials with that in the future. But you will see how I did this where I've got a soft look, and you can apply that to any of that shallow depth of field with your work. And it's basically, it's the same as colored pencil or any other medium. You just don't want harsh lines. Keep your harsh lines for your subject, and whatever is in the background you want to be very, very soft. You can have contrast, you just don't want soft. Oops, just scrolled past some questions. Andrew says, with the current technology we have, what do you think about using an iPhone 7 to take photos of artwork rather than a camera? It depends on the results that you're getting. I mean, when I post on social media, I used to use my DSLR. And now I've got the Samsung Note 5, and the camera on this thing's wonderful. And I'm able to get really good photos with this, so I don't need, it depends on what you're doing. But for prints, no. The quality is not the same because you've got a different lens. It's not an issue of having the best. And I'm not sure, this may change in the future though, because they just keep improving these cameras. We may get to a point where the phones would be good enough for prints, but I still don't think they're quite there. Prints, let's say I was out and I took a pretty landscape. Okay, I can make a print of that. But for artwork, the quality isn't usually quite as good as what you're going to get with a better camera. I mean, use the best what you have. If you don't have a decent camera, then use your iPhone if that's what you need to, but your prints may not be that great with that. Good enough for social media, absolutely. That they're definitely good enough for. But as far as for prints, that's going to be a little bit different. But I have to think, I've always said the phones, or commented phones won't be good enough for prints, but it may hit a time where they are, because they just keep improving these things. Cameron says, when I use colored pencil, there's a shine. Is there a way to get rid of the shine? Take a cloth. What you're seeing, you're using Prismacolor, so you're getting wax bloom. If you take a cloth, like a blending cloth, and just wipe over it, it'll remove a lot of that. And you can spray it with Prismacolor makes one that'll help seal it so you don't continue to get the wax bloom. You're always going to have some shine, and especially if you're burnishing, you're essentially polishing. It's not the same as graphite, but it's doing that same thing where you're pushing really hard. You're going to have shine. There are some products, like Prismacolor makes the one that keeps the wax bloom from coming up. It doesn't really get rid of the shine completely. That's probably just because of how you're blending. Have I used the Mono 100 pencils? I don't remember. Smart Art Box had some graphite pencils, and I think they sent some by the Tombow Mono. And I don't remember, honestly. Whatever I did, it wasn't something that was super realistic, so I can't really give a review with that. But I don't remember disliking those, if I'm remembering correctly about using them. Look up if you look up Lachri and Smart Art Box Graphite, see if that comes up, because I know they sent something a while ago, and I want to say I have some in my drawer. I don't remember. I'm too lazy to get up and look. But I might have. I have not done a full detailed piece, though, that I could give a full review on. Yeah, Pigs by Lee says for the prints for the phone, no, because there's too much lens distortion, being that it's a small lens. And absolutely, that would definitely be an issue, especially if it's a big painting. The bigger the paint, that would definitely be an issue. Okay. So I'm just building up these little feathers, trying to keep more of the white showing through than I think I'm going to need, because if I cover that up, even if I use an electric eraser, it's not going to be easy to pull these tiny details out. So it's better to work slow and be careful. Alan says, do you use the Tombow Mono Zero eraser? I really love it. I have the round. Which one is mine? Yes, that is what mine is, the round one. I need to get the one with the flat edge too. I keep forgetting. There's times where I'm like, I need to put one more item in my Amazon order to get free shipping or same day shipping or whatever. And that is probably one I could add. And I keep forgetting. I need to add it to my wish list. So next time I order and need one more thing to add on, I can throw that in the cart. Joe wants to know if I've addressed the background before I came in. It was done before. That was done not last night, the night before. You'll see this on the video, not next week, but the following week. I'm getting a little ahead on art, so my live streams are being done, or for this is way earlier than it normally would be. But for this project, normally the project would go up the next week. This will be in 2 weeks. But you'll see the background there, and that's where I'm going to be using the graphite powder and showing you how to use that with the soft tools, which was like the best combination ever. When I've used graphite powder before, I've used brushes, and I like them somewhat. The problem is when you use brushes, it catches the grain of the paper, and you get kind of it's a different texture look, which I don't always want. It's not as smooth as I would like. But the soft tools, this blender, oh my gosh, it is just so smooth. It's probably the smoothest I've ever had a background that was this large and this dark, and it was really fast to blend that out. So you will see that in 2 weeks. I'm really excited about that one. HR Portrait says, I have the rectangle Tombow, definitely worth getting. Yeah, I've heard wonderful things about it. I really need to get it. Let's see. Anthony says, I have the 72 Prismacolor set. Only 42 of them are light fast. Could I use a tiny bit of the non-light fast one and still sell the art? A lot of artists use all the pencils, don't worry about it being light fast, and they just put it behind UV protecting glass. That is an option. I would just let the buyer know, because when it happens, let's say in the future they've got it framed behind the UV protecting glass and using UV sprays, that does protect them. But if they break it and need to replace the frame, let them know to replace it with UV protecting glass, because those are not light fast colors. I think if you're honest with them and just let them know the colors you use, you've got some of the fugitive non-light fast ones in that piece, let them know that, and I think you're okay. You just need, I would be more comfortable just being honest with the buyer and letting them know that, and let them make the choice. Maybe they're not comfortable buying artwork that wasn't done with all light fast colors. Most buyers aren't even going to know what that means, so you're gonna have to explain it to them anyway. But a lot of artists do sell the work. I'm not comfortable with it, but you're going to have to decide that for yourself, basically. But just frame it behind the UV protecting glass if you do. I think that's kind of a must-have, or a must there. So again, not pushing very hard. It looks like I push harder than I do because my fingers bend weird, but I'm really not. Liv says, I use the Tombow mono eraser for my graphite drawings, and the eraser seems to fall off in chunks very easily. Is this something I can fix somehow? If it's falling off in chunks, I'm guessing either yours is defective, or I'll throw it on the floor, or you have it out too far. You don't want to have your eraser where it's sticking out super far, because that will break off. But you're going to have bits of it come off. I'm not really sure what you're talking about with chunks falling, but that shouldn't happen. I mean, you'll have sections, little bits, but not too bad. Valerie says, I prefer the Vanish 4-in-1 eraser over the Tombow, from Jerry's, over the Tombow Mono. Yeah, the 4-in-1 I really like. I have that. Do I have one up here? I usually have one on my easel. Those are wonderful erasers. I've actually got quite a few of them, and you can cut those with an X-Acto knife to be smaller sizes. So those are actually a really nice eraser too. I do like those. One of the things that you want to watch, I don't think I have a scratch piece of paper over here, but a lot of people, when they're drawing things, they will just do line, 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 line everywhere and not pay attention to the clumps and clusters. If you're doing something that you want to look very realistic, pay close attention to those clumps and clusters of fur or feathers or hair if you're drawing people. Don't just put a bunch of random confetti lines everywhere. That's not going to give you that realistic look. I'm going to lightly shade through this. Again, this, I will come back through and worry more about my values later. Right now, my main concern is mapping out details. Approximately where things are going to go. And this is that 9H. Cameron's Art Channel says, what is your favorite subject to draw, and what is your favorite medium? Animals are my favorite subjects. I love birds. Well, I just love birds in general, but I love their feathers. Love flamingos. I'm still trying to convince one to come live with me from the zoo. It's not going well. My favorite medium, probably acrylics. Like if I could only work with one medium from here on out. I don't want to, what my favorite is usually whatever I'm working on. Right now I'm loving graphite. But my favorite medium, well, it kind of changes from week to week, but if I could only ever work in one medium again, it would probably be acrylics, because I can do everything with acrylics that I can with every other medium. Like I wouldn't have a problem expressing any feel, any mood, any brush type. I can do all of it in acrylics. So that's one of the things that I like so much about that medium. Very, very versatile, and it's fast. So that one usually, I would say if I could only work in one forever would be that, but I wouldn't want to. I like working in lots of different mediums. I get bored if I do the same one too much. Joey says, do you ever draw line art, and what is your opinion of stylized versus realism? There is some stylized work that I absolutely love. It depends on the artist, I think, more than the style for me. The artist, what mood they're creating, what they're accomplishing is a bigger deal to me than the style. So yeah, I mean, stylized work can be absolutely phenomenal, or it can be something I really don't ever want to look at again. It depends on the artist. So for me personally, I prefer drawing things that are a little bit more realistic. There are a few subjects that I do get more stylized, like marine life, because it's something I've done for so long, and I did kind of develop more of a style before I got into super realistic stuff, and I still prefer to draw that way. And there are times where drawing stuff that's more stylized is just fun. So, but more often than not, I enjoy drawing things that are more realistic. I have a friend who does, she draws sugar gliders, and she does them in a very stylized way, and I love her work so, so much. So yeah, just depends. Mazzino says, I noticed some really skilled artists tend to use fewer pencils when creating realistic portrait art, i.e. 2B, 4B, 6B black pencil. Do you think less is more? Everybody's going to have their preferences. There's no one right or wrong way. What's best for me may not be best for you. It depends on how your brain works, how you like to work. For me, yeah, I don't usually use my entire set. I'll pick a few that I just keep going with those. Not because that's the right or wrong way, honestly. With me, it's because I'm lazy and don't want to continuously grab 8 different pencils or work between those. So I'll pick a handful and really focus more on those. And the set that you described, yeah, I could do fine, work with those just fine. Now, the thing that I don't like with the set that you said, there were no H's in there. I like my H pencils. If I don't have H pencils, then I want to use my shading tools, but I would rather have my bigger set with all of the H's, the harder lead, that's going to be a much lighter tone. Which one did I just grab? But that's going to be personal preference. There's never going to be one right or wrong way to create. And if somebody tells you that there is, I wouldn't listen to them. And I don't know why, as humans, we have a tendency to be like, okay, I like this product, or I like this method, so my way is the right way. The things I like are the right things to like. And it's just so silly. You get that debate with, and I'll joke around occasionally, but you get that with, like cell phones. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, back in, was it like 2012-ish? 2011, 2010, I don't remember, when the first Android phones came out after there had been the iPhone. The way friends, if they found out, like I remember posting on social media, I was all excited, I got my new phone, it was my first smartphone. And I remember some people commenting, oh, you should have gotten an iPhone. And they made a big deal out of that. And it's like, wait, but I like some of the features. And I personally prefer a lot of what Android does because of the customize. And anyway, that's just what I prefer. But people would act like if you chose the wrong thing, you were stupid and wrong. And you see that with that attitude with phones, you get with art a lot. And it's like, there's no one right or wrong way. What works for me, not necessarily going to be the same for the next artist. So every time I hear somebody say, this way's the only way, this way's the right way, that sort of thing, I just kind of roll my eyes. It's like, you're an idiot. That's not how that works. That's not how art in general works. Everybody's going to have their favorite methods and their favorite tools, and that is okay. The only time that I think it is a problem is when it starts affecting the archival quality of the work. I mean, if you're using products that aren't light fast, or I've seen people make work that was done using newspaper that was not, it's going to fade and yellow, and they didn't let the customers know that. That's an issue to me. I would want to be upfront about that and let those people know that's not going to last long term. It's not going to look like what they just paid $5,000 for in a few years. So that sort of thing is the only thing that I really feel a little bit more strong about, right or wrong. But that's just about having artwork last to me, though. The methods people use, everyone's going to have a different opinion in a different way, and it's all fine. And it's funny too, because you get a lot of people who try to do, well, my way is takes more skill. My way is, I'm a better artist because I do it this way. It's art. That's not how it works. I only care about my end result. If I am happy with the end result, then those supplies were just fine. Now, if it gets into a situation where you're having a hard time creating a certain effect and somebody says, do this way instead, okay, that's a different situation altogether. Then their way may work really well for you. Go ahead and try that. But if you like the results you're getting and somebody's like, no, you have to do it this way, that's a little silly. Try that way because you may like it, but don't feel like that's the only way to do it. The Art of Joseph Fincham asks if my photo is in grayscale. It is. Whenever I am working in black and white, I will always make my reference photo in black and white too, so that I can better judge my values. It makes it so much easier. Jose says, asks, how do you know what gradient of hardness to use when layering without over polishing the graphite? If you're not sure, grab a scratch piece of paper of whatever kind of paper you're working on, have a scratch that you can test it out on. And I don't know if you probably can't see, but off to the side of mine, I even test mine occasionally to tell what's going to work better. And at this point, for me, it's just from experience. I've done this enough times. I know I like what this pencil does for this, that one for that. You're going to have to, the more you draw, the more that will just come naturally, where you're like, okay, that didn't work out so well. But try stuff out on a scratch piece of paper while you're starting. I think that'll make it a lot easier for you. Anthony says, can you do the smooth blending of portraits in acrylic? I don't think I've seen you do any. You can, it's harder. I have to use an airbrush to keep it wet in order to do it. It's way easier to do in oils, and so that's why I stick with oils for that, but it absolutely can be done in acrylics. And have just as beautiful of results as what you get in oils. It's just harder to blend. But definitely can be done. One of my favorite portrait artists, I can't remember his name. I follow him on Facebook. I haven't seen stuff from him in a while, but he does these super realistic acrylic portraits, and they look like photographs. They're so amazing. JAR wants to know how I keep my colored pencils when I have multiple brands. I have these pastel boxes, these 3-drawer pastel boxes, and I have a different box for each brand. And then they're organized by color inside of that. Karen says, apart from Prisma, is there a brand that I can use for white highlights? I'm assuming you mean for your colored pencil work. There are a lot of ways to get white highlights with color, or with colored pencil. I like the Derwent Drawing Chinese White. I like the Luminance White. I don't even touch my Prismacolor pencils at all anymore unless I have to do a quick sample of something. But those are really good. And then, of course, the Touch-Up Texture Titanium White Mixture, like you saw me use in last week's live stream or on today's video. That is wonderful. And I have links in today's video, the video that went up earlier today with the owl, showing how to do those white highlights. Elise wants to know my favorite graphite brand. It's a toss-up between the Faber-Castell 9000 series and the new Derwent Graphic pencils. And the funny thing is, I've got both out, and I find myself reaching for the Derwent Graphics more, which I never thought I would say because I love the Derwent or the Faber-Castell 9000 so much. They're both wonderful pencils, but the Derwent Graphics, they've got a bigger range, and so I'm finding myself reaching for those more than I am my Faber-Castell. But my Faber-Castell, the 8B pencil, I love in that set. I like that one more than the darker ones that I have in the Derwent Graphics. Eric Draws says, but iPhones are better, Lisa. Well, they hold a charge better. I'll give you that. I like to customize stuff in a way that Apple does not like. John Metlow, this is a good question. He says, hi, Lisa. If you draw a picture from a photo rather than draw it from a model or nature, do you compromise field of depth, proportion, and color coordination? This is like this ongoing debate with artists who say that if you work from a photo, there's distortion, there's this, there's that. When we draw stuff, even when we're really accurate, chances are the drawing is going to be slightly distorted anyway. So I don't think it's even a noticeable amount. And the people who I've seen argue that, I think are full of it, honestly. Personal opinion. I don't notice a difference with a photo. If it's a decent camera, some cameras are going to distort things to an extent that it would be noticeable if you copied it exactly. The thing is, when you work from reference photo, you're using it's a different skill set than working from a live model. So it's just a different way to look at things, and you learn to look at things from a photo in a three-dimensional way. You train your brain to see it that way, and so you create artwork that has the same amount of dimension as someone who works from a live photo. And the people who are not live photo, live model, the people who are so big on only work from a live model, those people, they tend to prefer that method. So they're, like I was talking about earlier, are in the mindset of my way is the only way, my way is the correct way, here are my reasons. Well, I have seen artwork done from photo and artwork done from life, and I can't look at that from a very skilled artist and go, that one's from photo, it's not as realistic, it's flat, it's this, it's that. If you're using a decent reference photo, if you teach your brain to see photos in a three-dimensional way, you can create just as realistic, just as much as working live. And it depends on the artist, though, because some artists are never going to be able to look at a reference photo and see the dimension that they see from working live. They use, like I said, totally different skill set. I watched a video that was such BS. This guy was saying how if you get to where you're working from a reference photo, you will lose the ability to draw from live. And you'll permanently lose it. What are you smoking? That is not how, what? It's a different skill set. You may get out of practice, but that doesn't mean you can't get back into practice of drawing from live models. It was the most ridiculous, scare tactic type. My way's the only way, do my way, or you may never be able to do it again. It actually kind of irritates me just because I hate that attitude of my way's the only way. But no, like I said, it's a different skill set. It uses different, it just takes practice of getting used to looking at a photo, seeing it three-dimensionally, and then recreating it in a three-dimensional way. Now, for me, I'm going to have a much better result. I'm better at working from photo than I am live. I'm out of practice on drawing live. I can do it, but I am out of practice. So I'm now going to be faster and better and get better results working this way mine are going to look much more realistic, have much more depth, because I've trained my eyes to see things this way, if that makes any sense. But it is definitely one of those things that is a huge, like, controversial thing in the art world. How is there controversy in the art world? It's so crazy. People need to find better things to do with their time, I think, or spend more time drawing and less time arguing. I think it's a good plan. But yeah, so you are going to hear like every argument, and I've heard every argument. I don't necessarily agree with all of the arguments of one is superior to the other. It depends on the artist. It depends on what you're trying to create. Let's say drawing, in this case, my shoulder chicken. I can put him right next to me and use him as a model, and he is going to keep on moving, and I'm not going to be able to see all of these little face feathers. I'm not going to be able to get the detail as easily as what I can from a photo. So when you're going for photorealism, that's the whole thing with photorealism. It's from a photo. That's what the definition is. People misunderstand and think photorealism means it has to look like it's a photograph. First, that's hyperrealism, when you can't tell the difference between the photo and the artwork. That's more getting into hyperrealism. But the other thing is just you're working from a photo. That's kind of the point there. So different styles work better, I think. Maybe easier to do live, but it can definitely be done. You can definitely make something just as realistic from photo as you can from live, in my opinion. Joey says, using reference is right or wrong. Tracing, where do you draw the line between reference and cheating? I get to ask this a lot. First, you cannot cheat in art. No such thing. Does not exist unless you're copying someone else's artwork and claiming it as your own. If you see one of my paintings and you're like, wow, that's awesome, I'm going to copy it and say that I came up with this. That's cheating. That's wrong. But if I took a photo, this is a photo I took. So step one, my art, my design, my composition, everything here is my art, and photography is art anyway. So that was mine anyway. So being that I trace this, what difference does it make? It's still my art. It started out from the base foundation as my art. So there's that. But even so, and this is another thing where you get people who want to argue about it. I don't care what methods somebody uses to create awesome art. You created something that did not previously exist. Yeah, I've got a photograph of this, but it's not going to look the same. This is my interpretation of that photo. There will be differences. I will adjust contrast or adjust the composition and different things in different areas to try to hopefully improve on that photo. But there's just to me, you can't cheat in art. I don't care if you take a projector. I've seen artists do this. To me, it seems like it'd be more work, but they'll take a projector and project the image and paint while the projector's on there and match their colors while the projector's on there. They are creating something that didn't exist. So that's fine. I don't see the problem with that. What matters to me is what the artist's end result is. That makes such a big, that's all that matters, I think. Unless they're lying and they're like, yeah, I freehanded this. Why would you even say that? Just say you painted it. I don't know why you've got to lie about that you freehanded something you didn't freehand. That gets weird to me. But if you have rights to use the photo, I don't think you can cheat. I don't think there is such a thing in art. And people who say there is, I think, completely miss the point of art. That's just my opinion on it. And I don't draw a line. I mean, let's say you can see the amount of details I have on here. I have a general sketch of which direction the feathers go, and then now I'm freehanding everything in on top of that. I traced out my general outline to save time. Again, my reference photo, it's my artwork from the very beginning of the process to the end. Heck, it's my chicken. It's really my process. Well, okay, I didn't hatch him from an egg. That would even be better. But I think you get the point, though. Even if somebody had taken this and drew out every little feather, traced it, and then went through and shaded, they're still doing it. They're still doing the footwork. And the people who get so upset about somebody tracing are people who don't understand what tracing can and can't do for you. It doesn't do all the work for you. You still have to know how to draw. If you can't draw and you trace something out, but you can't draw, it shows in the finished project. There's no hiding the fact that you can't draw. It's not an instant win button, which is definitely something that people who have never used the tools or projectors, light boxes, whatever, that don't understand that there is no instant win. They think that they're going to cheat. Well, that they're skipping steps. I've been teaching for 17 years. Well, I started teaching well, longer than that now, if you count YouTube. But I mean, I started teaching a very long time ago. And one of the methods that I saw work best for students was to have them trace. But I can't tell you how many times I traced something out myself for the student, and they still ended up with something that looked very childlike, just because their skills were there. They can get better later on, but they started out that way. It's not an instant win button, even if I drew it out for them. So this idea that if you traced, you were cheating and it made your work that much better. No, it's a time saver. It's a tool, just like using an eraser, just like the fact that I taped my work down instead of struggled the whole time with the paper moving. It's a tool. That's it. So to me, there's no line as long as you have rights to use that photo. All I care about is how good your finished project is. That's what matters to me. Everyone's going to argue about this, but that's my long. Can you tell I'm kind of passionate about that? Because I get sick of hearing that myself from people. It's like, if you have taught that method, you would see firsthand, like I have. I've witnessed how much people can learn and get better from tracing, and what tracing can and can't do for you. And some people refuse to accept that's a thing. Okay, scrolling. Let's see. Oops, looks like I missed a bunch of questions here. Okay. Karen wants to know, which brand of pencils can I use for white highlights? I think I answered that with colored pencil. There's not a white pencil I use for white highlights for graphite, so that I can't help you with. Kat says, I just ordered my first 3-drawer pencil box. Excited to get it and get organized. Do you have any other favorite organizing tips? Oh, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. Good question. And I would say just watch my studio tour. That one, you can see what I use for organizing. Oh, if you have space for it, you can get dressers for like 100, 120 from IKEA, and that's in my studio tour that I use I have a different drawer for graphite, a different one for, my brain's shut off right now, for acrylics, a different one for oils, and that I love having all of my art supplies in a drawer like that. You can also use toolboxes. Art supply toolboxes that are made for artists are usually crazy overpriced. If you go to wherever has toolboxes, hardware store, whatever, look at their like Rubbermaid brand toolboxes, that sort of thing. You can get super cheap. Fishing tackle boxes are great for storing art supplies. So that would be my tip. Diane says, have you worked in pastels? And if so, have you had any luck photographing them? I have in the past. I don't anymore. I just don't like how they feel on my hands. I never had a hard time photographing them though, because they're fairly matte, so they photograph pretty well. I just used my regular camera. Misuki says, I only have Joann's near my house, and when I look online for papers to use, I find them way too expensive for my budget. Any other recommendations on stores online for me to get paper? Dick Blick and Jerry's are the two that I go to. And even sometimes I'll be able to link things in from Amazon. The problem is Amazon for paper is normally crazy overpriced. I link it there so you guys can see it, but I, in most cases, would recommend go to like Jerry's Artorama or dickblick.com to get papers. And what I do is just order enough. I wait until I need like a lot of paint and a lot of things and make a big order so that you don't have to pay shipping. And make sure you sign up for their email newsletters, because they'll let you know when they have deals where you only have to buy like $49 worth of stuff to get free shipping. But that is my recommendation there. Joann's they used to have more art supplies, and several years ago they just started getting rid of everything and really focusing more on crafts and sewing and such. They never had a ton of art supplies, but a heck of a lot more than what they do now. Now what I'm doing right now, this is extremely slow. Once I get further out, this is going to go much faster. But this area in the face where I've got this tight, tiny detail, I really want to take my time and make sure that I capture that look. Have I ever used Winsor & Newton Sands oil for blending? Mona Lisa Zestic Gamsol are not available in my country. I'm also thinking if I can use Winsor Newton Sans oil as it. I'm not sure on that one. I would contact Winsor Newton and ask how that compares to Gamsol or odorless paint thinner. Ask them what the difference is. Let them know what you're using it for, and the company themselves should email you back and let you know whether or not that'll work well. I'm really not sure. And I know people are asking, or when people ask about the price of paper and things being too expensive. Here's the thing. When you're working in, whether it be graphite or especially with colored pencil, those are slow mediums. I don't understand cheaping out. If you're going to spend the amount of time I am on something like this, where I will put 8 to 10 hours into a piece, I don't understand wanting to save like $2 on something that I'm going to spend weeks working on. I mean, this one won't take me weeks, but the average artist usually will put weeks into each piece. Is saving $2 on a piece of paper worth working on crappy paper? I know, trust me, I understand the starving artist thing. I did that for so long. But you do have to get to a point where you understand there is a difference. The quality and how much you pay for stuff, it is worth spending a little more on that. And I would do the typical, what always used to drive me crazy when people would, talk about not having money for stuff. They go, oh, well, just don't get a cup of Starbucks that day and now you've got money to buy that. And it always drove me crazy. I'm like, who has money for Starbucks? I don't buy Starbucks. That's crazy expensive. But so I won't throw that at you. But I mean, save up if you have to in order to get the better supply. It really does make a difference. Now with graphite, I'm not as picky about the paper that I'm using, and vellum works fairly well. Vellum, I won't be able to get things as dark as, say, the Fabriano Artistico that I'm working on now. But like Strathmore vellum, that's okay. Strathmore has a mixed media paper that's decent. You want something that's fairly smooth, but those papers are actually okay. So those you may be able to find at Joann's. It's surprising to me that you have Joann's and not Hobby Lobby or Michael's, especially. Michael's has a bigger selection of stuff that would work for graphite anyway. I don't love what they have for colored pencil, but that would be an option. But watch where you're trying to save money. There's areas where I think it's worth it, and there's areas where it's like, that is not, if you're using, especially the pencils I use, where they get very expensive with colored pencil, and I hear this a lot from artists who want a cheaper paper, and it's like, you spent an arm and a leg on those pencils, why are you cheaping out on the paper? That makes a big difference. The paper that you're using makes a huge difference in the end result. Cameron wants to know if do I ever like to draw celebrities? Sometimes I do, especially when I'm all excited about like Game of Thrones. I've drawn three characters from there. I do, but I don't anymore because I don't even want to deal with copyright issues and copyright strikes. And I don't sell work of celebrities that I've done. I have some on my website, but it's just to show people, look, I can draw people. But I don't sell the artwork at all. I don't sell prints. I don't do any of that. I'm not getting into any of that mess. But I don't anymore, just because everything I paint or draw, I need to be able to put on YouTube. And you end up with certain copyright things. And so while like Game of Thrones, they've always encouraged fan art, so I should be fine. At any point, they could change their mind, and I may have to pull those videos if they did. So far, everything's been fine, but it's like, I don't know. I just got to a point where it's like, what's the point? I can't sell it. I've got enough on my site where when I was taking commissions, I wanted those on my site so people could see I could draw what the person looked like. But anymore, no, that's not something you will likely see me do much, unless like my husband decides he needs a certain celebrity that he wants a portrait done for, which is not likely, but that would pretty much be the only time you'd see me do that. Besides the Murloc that I plan to paint from World of Warcraft, because I need that for myself. But that's because I will be painting it for myself. Oops, scroll too far again. Yeah, Eric Draws, this is a great statement. He says the quality of your skills will match the quality of your tools. That really does play a role. I mean, if you're using cheap tools, I don't to an extent. I actually saw an artist that we recently did for our collaboration. He did a drawing on Instagram or posted it where he had done artwork. He did the Superman logo in salt, which was pretty cool. But I mean, yeah, what you pay for really is what you get in a lot of times. I mean, when I was younger, I would just get whatever the cheapest I could afford. And now that when I started using more expensive stuff, it's like, oh, that's why I kind of couldn't get that to blend right. That's why I was having problems getting the results that I wanted. The medium, the paper, the surface, the canvas type, that all played a big role. Schizoid wants to know if I have any plans for a water-soluble graphite live stream. I need to. I keep forgetting that I have those, honestly. And when I used those, they were so much fun. I really liked the water-soluble graphite pencils. I need to do those again. So yes, there will be one. I just don't know when. Don Hill says, I'm surprised you get any drawing done answering questions. I say as I distract you from it. Sorry. Max says, what is the best way to combine Polychromos and Lyra Rembrandt? Because they are the only colored pencils, light fast, I can get. I don't know. Use them is the best way. There's no magic. There's no, this one has to go first, that one next. Use them. Just draw with them. They work together very well. There's no magic order or anything involved. Okay, where's my 8H? Let's start getting some of these sections in here a little better. Oops, scroll down too far. Jennifer wants to know how to cut down large paper. Right now, I usually use, I've got a large mat cutter. I forget the brand, Logan, I think. I use that, but before I had that, what I would do is put down a piece of cardboard, like an old box from Amazon or something like that, and take a ruler and a box cutter and just cut a straight line that way. And actually, honestly, sometimes when I don't want to pull the mat cutter out, I still do that. The amazing Rado says, I know the quality issues in Prismacolor, but I often find that I like the Prismas better than Polychromos. Do you think that too? Me personally, no, because the breakage angered me so much that I was like, never, I hate these. It'll go up in a couple of weeks. I reviewed the Marco Refine, if I'm probably saying that wrong. I say all the things wrong. Fine art pencils, and those, I did a quick little sample with Prismacolor just to shade in a circle. I liked the end result, but the pencils broke like 3 times just shading in a pencil. Like, what the heck, Prismacolor? But, yeah, no, I don't miss using those. No, they work. I like Prismacolor for blending skin, because they're so smooth. So I definitely understand why some people like them for certain techniques better. I can understand where some things do work better with different pencils. So I get why a lot of artists still like them. But the breakage angers me too much to experience the like portion myself. But you're not alone in that feeling. There are a lot of artists that even though they break like that, they're willing to deal with it because they like the results they get so much. Andrew says, how do you remove the tape from your artwork without getting the paper teared or peel? Without tearing it? Basically, when I remove tape, let me see if let's say the tape is here up against the paper. When I pull that away, I'm going to go very, very slow, and I'm going to pull the tape away from the paper. Don't pull towards the paper. It will tear it. It doesn't matter how great your paper is. That is a great way to tear it. Pull the tape very slowly and away from your work, not towards. Good question. Karen says, please, please, please accept me in the Facebook group. I have joined your Patreon. I have to go through later on. It'll probably not be till tomorrow, and go through and add a bunch of people. So I will get that. If I haven't gotten you by tomorrow night, message me through Patreon to remind me, or send me an email. Cameron's Art Channel says, do you think that Strathmore Bristol smooth paper is good with colored pencil and graphite drawings? Graphite, mediocre. Colored pencil, I hate it. I cannot get the color saturation I want with that. So I'm not a fan of that for colored pencil at all. Some artists like it, so give it a try and see if it works with your methods. It's not like I can say it's the worst paper in the world, never use it. It depends on how you work. For me, it is not ideal. The way I layer and the way that I blend, I was not happy with the results at all with that paper. And really, the end result, it's not that the end result is bad. I just felt I could never get my color saturation as dark as what I wanted it to be. Switching over to a 6H here, make this a little bit darker. When I used to work in graphite, I would use the Prismacolor Ebony, and then I switched to the General's Layout Extra Black, which I still prefer. That's a wonderful pencil, which I apparently don't have out right now. But anyway, when I used that pencil, I would do my entire piece just with that, and blending tools. It was a one pen, I was totally a one pencil show. That was the only one that I used. And I was still pretty happy with the results I got there, but they tended to be a little bit more grainy and gritty than what I can get by using the 4H's and mixing these in. But if you're trying to save money on supplies, that's one thing. Graphite is the way to go. It does not cost that much to get started with graphite. Johanna wants to know how I feel about Strathmore's colored pencil paper. I think that they should have tested it with colored pencil artists before releasing it. That paper is not what I want from a colored pencil paper. It's okay for graphite, and actually I use it as scratch paper all the time because I hated it. I did a review on it, and you can look that up. It was with the Tiger. And you just look up Lachri and Strathmore colored pencil paper review. That should come up. It was so unpleasant for me. There was nothing that I can say I honestly liked about it other than the fact that you can easily buy it. I mean, I guess that's a positive. It warped really badly, whether I used odorless mineral spirits, burnished, where I airbrushed the background. Every method I used on that, it warped. And so people were saying, well, it's not for using an airbrush. It's not for odorless mineral spirits. It's for colored pencil. Most colored pencil artists, a large majority of them anyway, are going to use odorless mineral spirits. So if it can't handle that, that's an issue. But I did test it with just burnishing, and didn't work well for that. Everything made that paper warp. That was my main complaint there. The other complaint I had is that it was basically a lightweight version of Strathmore vellum. Like, what's the point? If I want to use something that smooth, I'm glad to use Strathmore vellum, Bristol vellum, because that's going to give me, what pencil am I looking for right now? That's going to give me a much heavier weight. I'm not as likely to tear it. I mean, I like heavyweight paper myself. The colored pencil one was really lightweight, and it just, everything made that warp. Everything I did made it warp, and then I couldn't get the color saturation I wanted because there wasn't enough tooth on the paper. I feel like they wanted to quickly release something saying, oh, colored pencil's really popular right now, so let's quickly release a product for colored pencil artists because we're going to sell a lot. And I'm sure they do, because it's the only paper out there that says it's for colored pencil. And it's probably the worst paper I would use. Like, I don't see it being good for anyone, honestly. It's not that good artwork. I mean, I like the drawing I completed, but that drawing would have looked a million times better had I used Fabriano or even Stonehenge or Canson Me Thames. Anything would have had more tooth and wouldn't have warped, would have been better than what I got with that paper. So I am not a fan, and it kind of, I think where I'm a little bit irritated with Strathmore on that is I feel like it was just a big marketing thing. Oh, let's throw the name colored pencil on something without checking to see if it's good for colored pencil. That's what that product felt like to me. I very much did not like it. The Amazing Rado says, do you think that some can get the same results, for example, Heather Rooney does with different techniques besides burnishing as she does? Yeah, I mean, it's the thing with art, there's no one right way. I mean, there's 20 different methods you could use to get to the same result. She is a phenomenal artist. I'm pretty sure she could use any technique and it would be amazing. But no, you can use many different techniques in order to get to the same end result. I've seen other artists who are just as good as her, and they'll use light blending, no burnishing, and they get the same results. I've seen other artists who use odorless mineral spirits. I mean, I've seen it done in many, many different ways and get the same amazing results that she does. So yes, it can definitely be done with different techniques. Kaneho says, is the spray mount and some other paper a good resource in case you have no frisket or tape? It depends on what you're using it for. If I'm airbrushing a lot with water, or not with water, but with actual airbrush paint, that is very thin, and if I use the paint heavy, which ideally you shouldn't with airbrush paint, but it's more likely to slide under. The tape is not really going to stick down. But if I'm using it light, keeping a light hand and using it back, you're just making a stencil, and you could do that. That would work. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but that is an alternative. Taking that piece of paper and spray. Actually, I wouldn't do a spray mount though, because that may cause problems with you don't want that mounting spray to stick to the artwork. So that I wouldn't do. But you could essentially make a stencil and like cut out of whatever on the paper and tape, use regular masking tape. I would just tape it to the board or whatever you're drawing to, tape it to that, but not to the artwork itself. But you could use that as a bit of a stencil. It wouldn't be, excuse me, as effective, but it could be done. And it does limit you a little bit in that you're more likely to get overspray getting under, depending how careful you are with that stencil. You can kind of make a mess that way. But there are a lot of stencils, like the flame stencils that I use and a few different ones, where you're just careful and you're using light layers, so you're not having the paint slide under as much. So yes, yes and no. It depends on what you're doing, but sort of yes. Anthony says, do you ever feel guilty or apologize to art supplies that you don't use? Is that just me? I end up using everything sooner or later. If it's something I'm not going to use, I give it to either one of the kids that lives in my complex or to the girls who work in the front office. They all like art, and so I'll give supplies to them all the time. It makes them happy if I really am not going to use them. And then it's really just an issue of how much storage space I have. If I can store it, I'm going to keep it. But if it's something I know I'm not going to use, I'm out of storage space, I am limited in here, as you can see with all the canvases behind me, I'm out of space, then I will go ahead and donate them to people. I'm a bit of an art supply hoarder, though, so I don't feel guilty about not using them. I just gaze at them and pet them and tell them they're pretty. I have issues. Okay, let's see. Kat says, I'm actually trying polychromos on pastel matte right now. I like the results so far. Fingers crossed. Have you ever used sanded paper for colored pencil? I use it all the time. That's what I use when I use powder blender. I use Fisher 400. I love. And you can use odorless mineral spirits. Even if you're not using powder blender, sanded paper can give you some really cool effects, and you can get fine detail that I didn't think you'd be able to. Though it's a pretty cool paper. Let's see. Tips coming up with your artist name. I've watched that video multiple times and I'm stumped. Here's the thing. I don't know. I think I give the wrong impression that you need to make up a name like I did. My name is just because I hated my maiden name. I knew sooner or later I'd get married. I didn't want that to change at any point. I wanted it to stay the same throughout my entire career. And I started with art very young. So it was kind of like I have a huge future ahead of potential name change, or hopefully just one name change. But I didn't want to have to be jumping around with names. And so, and especially at that point, I didn't know who I'd married. Maybe I'd hate that last name too. So I didn't want to go back and forth. You don't need to come up with fancy names. You can use just your name. I could have used Lisa Clow or Lisa Clow Fine Art. Mine worked well for me because Lachri.com, no one used that URL, and I got my URL very early before people were buying them all up and trying to sell them back to people. Freaking GoDaddy, I hate that company so much. Not because of this, that's just a separate thing. They bought, what did they buy? Lachri.net, Lachri.whatever, and tried to sell it back to me later on, like years later. And it's like, you guys are sleazy. I don't know why, that just feels really super sleazy to me. But anyway, and also I'm not paying for that because I have Lachri.com. Why would I need those? And they can't use them because then they would, no one with art could use them because they would end up with trademark issues. Even if you don't have it trademarked, you have, what is it called? There's a legal term, basically, because I've been using that name for so long that another artist they can't sell it to another artist, so they basically paid for it for nothing. Side rant there. But anyway, back to your actual question. You don't feel like you can't just use your real name. And I see that a lot where people assume they have to make up a fancy one. Like for a long time, I used Water of Life Studio because I was painting water and life inside that water. It was the fish and marine life, and that's all I did, which didn't make sense for me long term because I no longer do that now. I'm glad I stopped doing that early on. I still sign my work with Lachri, but I thought I needed a fancy name too. I remember one artist I knew who he was using something with fire something studio. I'm like, well, I need something. I'll use water because of water and stuff lives in it and all that. It was unnecessary. I don't know. I think be careful when you make up your names too, because you can almost alienate or dehumanize yourself a bit too much if it's too out there, too I mean, as an artist, you want to humanize yourself. That is a very big deal. You want your fan base to really connect to you, and so you have to be careful with what you're calling yourself. It's like you want to be unique. So if your name is, let's say it was like Lisa Brown, okay, there's too many. That would not probably make the ideal URL for my website. Could do Lisa Brown Fine Art. Okay, that would be way too long. That would probably not be best. So there are cases where I might go ahead and come up with something different, but don't feel like it has to be something that isn't just what your actual real name is. And for me, if it helps, the Lachri, it's a combination of my name and my sister Christy's name. My mom used to breed basset hounds and show basset hounds and Shih Tzus. And that was her breeder name. Like, she had mixed our two names, and that's what she used. And I always liked how it sounded. So that's where that came from. Plus, then it has a little meaning. You know, it's my sister and that. But that's where that came from for me. So if you do decide to make something up, I would say try to find something that has a little bit of meaning to you, like a family member, or maybe your kids' names mixed in or something like that. It's just the letters. It was the L and A from my name, and then CHRI from my sister Christy. Cameron's art channel says, can't you use a mechanical pencil to scrape away thin lines? With Caran d'Ache colored pencils, I get to get detailed hair. Some people do. It depends on how you're working. And most people, when they do that, the mechanical pencil is not ideal if it has graphite in it. But some people will use an X-Acto knife. That's used more often, like the fine pointed ones. That, for me, doesn't work because I'm using odorless mineral spirits. So my paper underneath is basically stained. It's almost like I'm dyeing the paper, so there's no white really left. That does not work on me. The Touch-Up Texture titanium white mixture works so good for me. I don't see any reason to use any other method. It gives me the perfect results. So that would be, like, I'm not even going to bother trying to scrape stuff, but that never worked for the techniques that I used using the X-Acto knife, like I've seen, like Heather Rooney will do. Some artists will use that. The odorless mineral spirits pretty much makes that not the most effective way to get white. I can lighten things that way, but I usually will not pull back up to white if I've blended with the odorless mineral spirits already. Quinn says, when you frame a piece of paper, do you leave a border for the frame? For example, if your frame overlaps 1/2 inch over your piece, you have 1/2 inch border so your drawing fits in. Okay, when I frame stuff, this one, don't know what size this is actually. I think this is an 11 by 14 inch. But what I will do is get a mat. I will cut a mat that's 11 by 14. And what I have is about 1/2 inch around the border here. I don't think you can see up this high, but there's a little bit of a gap that I leave the white paper. And when I mat it, I make sure my mat covers that. I don't leave a white border showing all the way around. I don't like how that looks. I'm going to have the mat come right up to that. It'll overlap just a little bit. And so I plan my artwork for that. And that's one of the reasons you don't want areas to just barely touch the edge of the paper. Like even his crest at the top, which I don't think shows on camera. I think I've got that. Yeah, you can't really see it. But his crest on this one touches the top. I'm going to shade that so that it looks like it just goes off the page more. Right now it just barely touches. Because I need to allow for the fact, there's a hair in my mouth. I need to allow for the fact that there's going to be a mat that's going to overlap a little bit. So, and then the frame will overlap the mat just a little bit on the outer edge there. Oops, scrolled too far. Just scrolling to get to this. I already talked about the sharpener I use, so I'm not going to come back to that again. Anthony says there's an A in your name. How do you spell Lisa? Let's see. The sharpener I use for Caran d'Ache is the same as everything else, and those are usually those Coombe sharpeners that I already talked about earlier on in the video. I don't want to keep, and I apologize to you guys because I know some of you came in late, so you may not have heard the answers, but I don't want to keep answering the same question again and again and again in the video. So some of these I'll skip through because I have already answered them. If you go back to the parts you missed, they'll be in there. But the Coombe sharpeners are what I like. Andy says, hello from Indonesia. I want to ask if you ever use the Caran d'Ache blender that comes with a 76 set of luminance. What do you think about them? I've tried it a few times. Don't love it. I tried it on the owl, the video that went up today. I used it on him on the outer edge, so I blended into the back. That white blender, not totally clear. It actually has a foggy white layer and it affects the color of the pencils. More so than the colorless blender from Prismacolor. I don't like it. I don't like that blender at all. I've yet to find a great reason to use it. It worked okay on lighter feathers where it didn't matter if it lightened a bit, but when I was up against the black, that was not the most effective thing for me to use. It just, because I blend with the odorless mineral spirit, there's not a huge reason for me to go ahead and use a lot of these colorless blenders because that would require me to burnish, and burnishing hurts my hand, and I've complained about that before with arthritis in my hand. So it's not the ideal method for me to use. Oops, not that. It's not the one I want. There we go. But yeah, I tried it. And here's the thing. I can't say, it's not like I'm saying don't use it. It's terrible. It doesn't work for my technique is what I'm saying. Like it was just not the ideal choice for me. I'm just scraping my pencil. The 9H is so hard that it'll sometimes get scratchy. So I just wanted to dull it a little bit before I went onto the paper here. But I would still say give it a try. It just, like I said, not so ideal for the way that I work. So what I'm doing right now, you can kind of see a bit of a halo between here and the background. I need to come through around that edge where I didn't go right up against my drawing because I didn't want to smudge it. And I need to blend that out so I have a nice defined edge. I don't want it to look like there's a glow around my subject. And you want to watch that no matter what medium you're working in. It's really easy to end up with that halo effect, which is not so attractive. Make sure everything's blended right up against the subject. Andrew says, where do you get your artwork framed? I do it myself. I get open frames or wall frames if I'm framing something with paper, and I do that myself. I cut my mats myself, unless it's a standard. If it's up to an 11 by 14, I can buy pre-cut mats. Hobby Lobby sells them there. They're pretty cheap. But other than that, if it's anything larger or if it's an offside, then I cut it myself. It's a Logan. I need to make a video about mat cutting. I need to get better. I'm slow with it. I can do it, but there's math involved, which means I am slow with coming up with my dimensions and stuff. But I cut my own mats and then frame them myself. Honestly, more for the convenience than anything else. It's inconvenient for me to go drop off artwork and then figure out what's, I don't know. I just rather do it at home on my own time. It is much easier for me. So I'm using the 8H and just lightly shading over this. Now notice how on these pencils, I don't find myself reaching for the shading tools like I used to. I don't need them. I have more control with a lot of the blending I need with the pencil. But when I used to work with graphite, I really needed my shading tools. The blending stumps, I used these all the time. I don't use this that often now. Not with these pencils, both the Faber-Castell 9000 and the new Derwent Graphics. I find these lighter H pencils work beautifully for blending, and it gives me much more control. When you use the shading stumps, sometimes you'll get kind of fuzzy edges. It's harder to get the fine detail. And these lighter H pencils, they are perfect for this. I'm really, really happy with these. The Amazing Rado says, and this is a great question, do you think that working with warm yellowish light affects the final piece? 100%. Without a doubt, it absolutely affects your color. I remember I had a student who brought in work that she was trying to do something that was like purples and greens, and she brought it in and it was like, I don't know, those weren't the colors she used. I'm looking at that going, that is not the color that you're trying to, your reference photo, like, can you not see that? She's like, oh, well, the lighting at home is bad. Don't use that lighting then. Like you want to use a natural daylight bulb like the Alt-Light. You don't want to use bulbs that have that very, very yellow tint. If you're working in graphite, it's not going to be as big of a deal because you're not, it's black and white. There's no color shift there. Mostly. You know, it could affect as far as not seeing things as bright as you should, so there can cause strain on your eyes. You may not notice details that you could. You're going to see much more clearly under a daylight bulb. But with painting, oh yeah, that it makes a huge difference. I used to paint with regular, it was a white bulb, but it wasn't a daylight bulb. And I would get my work outside, I'd go to photograph, and it's like, this isn't even close to what I thought it looked like. It was so different, and not in a good way. Yeah, the bulbs that you're using make a big difference. Whoops, scrolled too far. I apologize if I missed some questions in here. Just the way the chat works, I end up skipping over things when I don't mean to. Barbara Lovelace says, I found Lisa via the Prismacolor versus Luminance video. I almost cried. I was so happy I wasn't alone. I thought, oh my God, my people. You know what's funny about those? Like, I did the Prismacolor versus Polychromos. I get so many more people mad at me about that one. Most people love it. But I get people who are like super Prismacolor fans, and they hate me that I didn't love Prismacolor. And it's like, I used to. Or people who are like, where's your loyalty? You said you used to love it, and now you don't. Loyalty to an art supply that is no longer making quality materials? Why would I be loyal to that? They're no one to me. They're not my family. If you make a crappy product, I'm going to call you out for it. I don't understand the being loyal for that. Was kind of a funny one. But I get people who get so mad at me. My pencils don't break. Well, you got lucky. You got a good batch. Congratulations. That's awesome. My old Prismacolors didn't break. Not like this. But it's so funny how angry people get about those videos that I didn't, because they'll love the product. Kind of like I was talking about, like iPhone versus Android. People will get super angry at you for not liking the one they liked. And like they get, it's like you insulted their mother. It's the funniest thing to watch how upset people get that you don't like the same stuff as them. And then I had people accusing me of being paid for the video. It was just paid for by Faber-Castell. I had never talked to Faber-Castell when I made that video. Actually, I talked to him recently at a that event, the art event thing I went to in March, but that was the only time I've ever talked to anyone from Faber-Castell. So it was kind of funny, like, no, I was just sharing my opinions. I didn't realize I was going to anger people that they didn't, because they are way too attached to their loyalty for an art supply. That one always made me laugh, though, the people getting mad at me about where my loyalty was because I used to like Prismacolor. My loyalty went wherever their quality control went. They both left at about the same time. Sayanti says, asks, will you ever do a video on gessoing canvas for ones with more tooth, like the double edge canvas? I can, but that's one that's easier to explain. Next time I work on one of those, I'll try to video it. But essentially, paint gesso on it, take some sandpaper and lightly sand it down. And I will make a video for you. But I mean, in the meantime, it's a really simple process. Gesso, let it dry completely, ideally overnight if you can, really let it dry, and then sand it. Just lightly until it's smooth for you. Whoops, scrolled too far again. I just missed a bunch of questions. Have you ever had a problem with harder lead scratching the paper and tearing the paper? If so, what would you do in that situation? I've not had it tear the paper, but I have had it scratch the paper and indent it, especially like the Strathmore Bristol Vellum, because that paper is kind of, not spongy, it's easy to indent. And in that case, I try to make it work. If it's too big of a scratch, I just have to start over. I mean, if the paper is really damaged. I have had times though where I did something and I was using Frisket and I used the razor blade to cut out the Frisket and I pushed too hard, a little too deep in the paper. I was able to blend over it and it didn't put a hole in the paper, but it did scratch it. When I blended over, you couldn't tell. So it just depends on how bad that is. If it's ripped or torn, you have to start over. Unfortunately, I mean, you can finish it and kind of put an acid-free tape on the back, but I would never sell artwork that has a hole or a rip in it. Moon Ram says, asks, what is your favorite inexpensive art supply? Graphite is one of the most inexpensive, and I do love graphite. Water-soluble graphite, Faber-Castell makes some. They are inexpensive, and those are absolutely awesome. And they're like, you could get a set for like $12 at Hobby Lobby, or I think if you use a 40% coupon, something like that. You don't have to pay very much for those. That would probably be one of my favorites, and it's about as inexpensive as you can get. My favorite old masters, time periods of movement of art. I don't know. I like so many. Joshua Wolf is asking. I like so many, and I can never think off the top of my head who my favorites are. I'm really bad when people ask my favorite of something. What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that? There are a few things I can answer. Most of the time I'm like, I don't know. I like most of them. I like a lot of them. I like things that were very realistic. But I also really like Van Gogh. So, well, I like some of Van Gogh, not all of his. I'm more fascinated by his life story, I think, than I am his artwork. But yeah, that's a hard one. I like a lot. Good question from Anthony, who asks, what are the differences between Inktense and watercolor? Inktense is water-soluble ink. It is permanent. When it dries, it will not lift. I can glaze over it, throw tons of water. It is not going to lift when it's dry and you've mixed with water, assuming. Watercolor is watercolor, and it can lift. So you're going to paint and use different techniques for both of them. But that's the gist of it. Inktense, water-soluble ink. Watercolor is watercolor. They're two different mediums. Oops, scroll too far. Dennis asks if I recommend a specific subject to draw when starting with colored pencils. It's funny you ask that because I just did a Q&A video. I edited it on, was it Saturday or Saturday before? I don't know, asking that very same question. And I'm going to provide you on that video with a reference photo I actually got from Pixabay that I thought would be perfect. But when starting with colored pencils, I think I'll just give you the rundown. I'll go further into it in the video that goes up in a couple weeks. But I think that roses are one of the best things for people to start with because you've got where the rose folds, you can get your dimension, you're working on shading and blending, but let's say a petal is not drawn accurately, no one's going to know the difference. It's not that big of a deal versus people who jump into drawing portraits. I think that they kind of set themselves up for some frustration because if something's a little bit off, you're having to worry about blending and everything being perfectly accurate, and that can be frustrated when you're new to a medium. And I like roses because it's like if you can learn to blend a rose, you can apply what you learned there to drawing portraits, but it's way less of a challenge and looks, I mean, you can mess it up pretty bad and it should still look pretty. It'll look like a rose. So roses, I think, are one of the best things to start with. I usually tell people when they're starting with colored pencil, avoid fur, feathers, or faces. Those are things that are a bit more of a challenge. And when you're first starting, it is much easier to start with something smooth like a rose. And if you don't like still life, you don't like flowers, maybe a fish or something that doesn't, scales, they do have the detail, but that is going to be less of a challenge. The problem with fish, though, you don't have as much with building depth. Like roses, because of the way that the roses fold, the petals fold, you can get more dimension there than you get fish. Most fish are fairly flat. Depends on the fish, but that would be another option. Goldfish will give you the body, the rounded body, so that would work. Well, the fat-bodied goldfish. I guess not all of them. Again, depends on the type. Well, and then I scrolled too far. Cameron's Art Channel wants to know when I started drawing. I started when I was little. I was sick all the time. I have celiac disease, but we didn't know that. And so it's an autoimmune disorder. So I was always sick with something or another. And so I drew. I mean, I like to sit inside and color or draw. And I've just always really liked drawing. I was probably about 12 when I decided to start trying to draw something realistically. Before it was like cartoony stuff. And at that point, I decided that I tried to draw a horse. I had a photo, I think it was a white unicorn, or maybe it was just a white horse, a painting that I had. It was printed on one of those like, what are they called? The pressed board. I don't know, something cheap from the 80s. And I drew that and I did it. It was really accurate. And I spent hours. I was so proud of myself. So that's really when I was like, okay, I want to start learning how to draw things more realistically when I was probably about 12. But I've been drawing my whole life. But that's when I was like, I want to do more realistic stuff. And 12 is about the time where most kids get to where they can focus and spend the time needed to make things look more realistic. It's like something switches in your brain and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can actually copy what I see now and take all the time necessary. When a lot of kids are younger, they don't sit still long enough. They kind of rush through all of the drawing. And so it doesn't surprise me that it was about 12 where I started trying to do things more realistically. April says with water soluble, or asks with water soluble graphite, will the drawing texture be the same as normal graphite? Will there be any difference in feel with the drawing stroke? Well, it'll be almost like you're combining graphite and watercolor. That's kind of where you add water and it has that, it dissolves like a watercolor pencil would. So it's closer to that. Moon Ram wants to know if I like pen and ink art. I do. I don't do it myself, but I love when other people do. I think it looks awesome. I'm always impressed by that kind of artwork. Black Cat says, read somewhere that Van Gogh might have been colorblind. Do you have any tips that maybe I really don't want to invest in the glasses? It's only slightly. No, I really don't. It's not something I've ever experienced, so it's not something I can necessarily personally relate to or give tips on. And that's a question that I actually get a lot from artists who are colorblind. And I've seen artwork done by colorblind artists. Obviously, you guys can make amazing artwork, but I don't have any tips because, like I said, it's not something that I've personally experienced. I do know that you really want to focus on your values a lot. I mean, you're really depending on your values in strong contrast quite a bit at that point, but I don't, unfortunately. You're going to want to contact somebody else, ideally, I think, who has dealt with color blindness and see what works for them. Mazzino says, how big of a portfolio do you think one should have initially before approaching a local art gallery for display? Powerful Ladybug nail polish, by the way. Thank you. It depends on the art gallery. It largely depends on the art gallery. If it's a gallery, if you're new, you're probably going to be targeting an art gallery who is for beginner artists. So they're not going to expect you to have 100 pieces of artwork to show them. And I mean, when you show an art gallery stuff, bring in your top, no more than 10 pieces. Usually they're not going to want to see more than that. You know, you bring in your best handful. But I would say it really depends on the gallery. Some are going to want to see more, and it depends on how advanced you are, how advanced of a, how established of a gallery, who is their target audience, their target market, their target audience, all of that. That is going to, I think, play a little bit more of a role. And a gallery that is really focused on professionals who have been in the business longer, they're probably going to, I would say at least 10. Or about 10. More than that, they're probably not going to look more than a handful. Put your best, some of those best at the beginning. But, probably want some of your best at the end in case they go all the way to the end, so you leave them with that great example. Or the last page of the portfolio, even better, I would think, almost put a collage of all those 10 so they can see all of them together. So just a reminder of all your awesomeness. Hopefully all your pieces would be awesome, though, within that. But a gallery, like when I was showing stuff, when I first started, I only had to show them a couple of pieces to get in. But realistically, they were letting everybody in. They weren't necessarily going for the most experienced artists, the first ones I was starting in. So it would just depend on the gallery. Now, the kind of galleries I might be interested in showing to, they're going to want a lot more than what the galleries I originally got into required. Where did I throw my brush thing? Oh, is that what fell on the floor a while ago? There it is. Used says fabric with folds are fun to draw when starting out too. And that's good practice because you're again going to the dimensions. You've got the highlight where it gets lighter and then it darkens back up. You get to your darkest points and then you lighten back up as it curves out. That's a really good tip. Wanda Wilson says, what about doing something with a tall ship? I'm not sure what for. If you mean for beginning artists, I mean, draw what you're interested in. I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about there. Because that was a while, whatever that question came from. Paint what you're interested in, but that's not what I would typically start a new artist on. And I do think that painting what you're interested in is going to produce better results than painting what somebody else told you to paint. So if you hate roses, that would not be the best choice for you to get started in. It might work great for some people, but if I asked a teenage boy to draw roses, more often than not, they weren't that excited about it. So we had to find alternatives for them. So it depends on the person. It depends on the artist, what interests you. So if you hate one thing that I suggest, I'm not saying that that's the only thing you should draw. I'm just saying that's what I've had the best experience with. But with for newer artists, but stuff like tall ships and things that are like that, not to start with. I wouldn't start someone or recommend that to start with. I would start with something that's a close-up, a study of something where you can really get an understanding for layering the pencils and blending, and then build out to things where it's, you know, a full landscape, full scene, full seascape, that sort of thing. Rich wants to know if I ever use cotton balls for blending large areas. I use cotton buds for small areas. I used to, and they do work. Although I have been using, on this piece, I started using the soft tool blender. These are like must-haves for me now. And you'll see that, actually, this is the one that I use the most, the angled one. You'll see that on the video in a couple weeks when this goes up. I use that for the graphite powder, but even when I blended things out where I had done the, shaded in with a pencil, I love those. That gave me the smoothest, most awesome results for blending, much more so than cotton balls or Q-tips do. Okay, blending, let's see. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I know some of you wanted to see the baby shoulder chicken, so if you want to wait a second, I will go wake him up and bring him in, and I'll answer a few more of your questions. So amuse yourselves in chat. I will be right back. Okay, I have the chicken. Let me grab his towel. So here is the model for this piece. And if you've downloaded the reference photo, you'll see that his cheek was really, really dark. It's not anymore. It's, you can kind of see, here, look at yourself. The lighting in here is bad, but his cheeks have gotten a lot more white than they were before. I think it's adorable. So yes, here's my model. What do you think? It's you. Not sure? Your feathers, he's molting right now, and there's just feathers everywhere all the time. Let's see, do we have any more questions to answer for the next few minutes? Oops. Bless you. You just pooped on my floor. Thanks. Good thing I have a towel down there. Okay, let's see. The wizard asked if I woke him up. I did not have to wake him up. I did have the light on in his room, luckily. So he's not too sleepy right now. Let's see. Raven said, the Easter egg painting took me like 5 days to finish. It was nowhere near 20 minutes. Well, I'm sure yours looks a lot better than mine. Mine was seriously rushed. Moonram says, have you tried art with the Elegant Writer pen? No, I have not. I don't actually know what the Elegant Writer pen is. Is that the one that changes color and you can, like, the marker one? I don't know what that one's called. Cameron's Art Channel says, or asks, does the Caran d'Ache colored pencil come in a woodless or wooden case? I think you can get them in that if you want to pay an arm and a leg. Mine did not. Mine came in a metal tin, I believe. And then now mine are in that wood, that 3-drawer pastel box. Let's see. Quinn says, do you attach your card to the back of your paintings and drawings? I know some artists like to do that. Absolutely. When my work goes into a gallery or when I sell it, if it's a canvas, I will use a staple gun and, well, sometimes I use tape. I used to use a staple gun, but I don't even know where I don't know if I have a staple gun anymore. I just thought of that. May need to find out. But I used to take a staple gun and staple it to the stretcher bars in the back. Not to the canvas, obviously, but just to the stretcher bars. I know you're unhappy you can't get on my shoulder right now, huh? Here. Is that better? There you go. But I would do that. Now, lately, because I don't know where that is, when I've sent stuff off, I've used tape to tape the card to the back. Or if it's a frame, I tape it to the frame. But that is a good question. And I like to do that because you'll have people who get your artwork, they like it, and they can't remember who you were. They can't necessarily read your signature. They can't remember where it came from. So, and that seemed to be a bigger problem in the past when stuff, no eating necklaces, brat. But, that I noticed being a problem where people would contact me years later going, I couldn't find you. But now that with the internet and stuff, it's easier to find who you're looking for. But I still put that post or the card on the back of everything that I send out. Jesse says, I know you've done digital art in the past. I was wondering what graphics tablet you used. I used to use my, what was that one? The Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 tablet. I had the original one of that. I used that for a lot. That's what first got me interested in doing digital art. I got the tablet not to draw on. I didn't realize I would like it to draw on so much, but it worked so great. And I did a lot of art on that one. Now I have the Wacom tablet. It's the, I want to say it's in the like $900-ish level. I just remember how much I paid for it, that it was about $900. I don't remember which model it is. It's the $900 model, but that one is really nice. It's not super huge, but it works really well. I love that one. Alan Wallace wants to know how I like Trump Olay art. It's not one that I really get into. Everyone's going to have their personal preferences. Whether I like or dislike something doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just not my what super interests me. Super interests me. How's that for grammar? I am tired. Can you tell? My brain's like, no, we're done. What do you think? Very sleepy? Wake up. Wake up. You're not talking at all. He usually never shuts up. Lately. Huh. His new favorite thing is when I lay down, I think I mentioned this last week, when I'm laying down, like if I'm laying on the couch or whatever, he'll come and get right in my face and talk and sing to me. He, for whatever reason, laying down means I'm going to get sang to, and he will be close enough I can't even focus on him. Because he gets right in my face for that. It's really funny. Let's see. I think we're about done. Looking through, seeing if I missed any questions. Eric Draws says, make him sing. Funny thing about birds, you don't make them do things. They do what they want. Picks by Lise wants to know what his modeling fee was. Extra millet. That's his favorite. Millet and the corn chips from, I always get the veggie bowls from Chipotle. He likes my chips. He can't, I have to keep him away from the veggie bowl itself though, because it has guacamole in it, and birds can't have guacamole. He doesn't understand that. It's actually the funniest thing in the world to watch him try to get into that bowl and how much work it takes for me to keep him away from it, because he is just determined to get some. I'm bigger than you though, so I win. Let's see. Going back through some of these questions. You're being abnormally, almost creepily quiet right now. This isn't like you. Are you camera shy? You don't even know the camera's on you. You can't make that claim. Let's see. Whoops. Emma says, do you find drawing fur that is all the same color, like a mouse, more difficult than drawing fur that is different colors, like a leopard? I find it so hard. Well, you want to use, no, don't eat necklaces. You want to find a reference photo that it has good lighting. I mean, if I was drawing a mouse and it was brown, solid brown, and there was no like definite light source where you have the shiny marks, then yeah, that's going to be a challenge to make it look good. Ideally, you want to be able to see where your lights and your darks are. So like if you look at the video that I did in colored pencil of the black leopard, look how many purples and blues and blacks I got in there. That to me was no more difficult than something that has spots or whatever else. requires you to have a better reference photo, I think, though, because you're depending on your light source to get the depth and the dimension there. Whereas with spots, you can kind of fill it in with the busyness of the spots. I've done that, like the cheetah that I did recently. That didn't have the best lighting on it as far as where the shine and highlight was, but it didn't really matter that much because I had the spots to make up for it, so I got the high contrast in the piece. But if it was a leopard in that same lighting situation, like a black leopard, that wouldn't have been ideal. I would have needed a stronger light source hitting the shine of the fur. So picking the right reference photo is the key when doing that. Okay, I think we are about done. I don't have any more questions coming in right now. Let's see. Oh, Conejo causing problems, I guess, either. And he's apparently not my friend today. That's funny. For those of you who are in chat and see the stuff Conejo likes to do, Conejo's actually a friend. I've known him. He's through YouTube for a very long time, and he just has a different sense of humor than some people, but he's not actually the jerk he comes across or tries to present himself as. So he's not a real troll. He just kind of acts like one sometimes. Let's see. Do I have any updates on the light fastness of Inktense? No, I still need to do that sample. I've got the UV glass that's sitting in the shelves behind me that I wanted to do the sample and put in the window. There are feather fluff everywhere. You made a mess. Yeah. Are you proud of yourself? There's also a feather on your beak, but that I just have to get the time to do it. I need to remember to do it because we're getting up to summer, and I think this would be the strongest light time. So I could kind of see how much that UV protecting glass really does protect it. So that will have to be sometime in the near future. Let's see. Clarice wants the chicken to have his own channel because he's adorable. I don't have time to do a channel because I think actually, I know for a fact he sucks at video editing. His idea of video editing is getting in my way while I edit and trying to eat the keyboard buttons. Or the mouse. I'll be like clicking the mouse and he's trying to bite underneath where my finger is. So yeah, I don't think he'd be very good at doing the work himself, which means I would have to do it and I don't have time. So you just have to share my channel. There's a feather on your beak. Are you pretending you're an owl again? He had a big feather on his beak yesterday. It looked like he was trying to be a snowy owl where they get the feathers covering their mouth. It was actually quite entertaining. I don't get out much though, so I find random things to be entertaining, like my chicken singing to me. But anyway, thank you guys for joining. Oops, did I hit you with my ponytail? You should be used to that by now. Thank you guys for joining us. Let's see. You thought he was a house elf like Dobby. Who was the house elf? My house elf is my Roomba. I called him my house elf. And Roomba actually did try to steal a sock. I'm not kidding. First day he was working, I had him out. It grabbed a sock out of the laundry room and was like dragging it around. I'm like, Dobby was a perfect name. He's trying to steal clothing. Let's see. But thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you guys next week. Next week will be the oil painting. I will be working in oil paint. This video, the full video won't go up for 2 weeks because the next week's Wednesday video is the acrylic, the flower I painted. This video will be in 2 weeks, and then the live stream next week, though, I should be working on that oil painting, the portrait that I was talking about. So that is what we have coming up. And again, thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you next week. Well, I do have a video going up tomorrow, but I will actually talk to you guys in person next week. Bye.